You're listening to Healing Wisdom. I'm Pandora Peoples, and today we're speaking with Detroit-based singer-songwriter Pat Smillie. We're going to hear a clip of Wide Open Heart from his new series of singles that he's produced with Josh Ford, aka Motor City Josh.
Spend my time ripping and running. Sometimes it takes me all damn day. When everything I do just seems to fall through, it gets so hard to concentrate. Hey, I'm indistractable when I'm loving you. I'm indistractable. I'm indistractable when I'm loving you. I'm indistractable. So many favors done for so many friends. I just spread myself a bit too thin. If I ever make it back into your loving arms, I'm never gonna leave again. I'm indistractable.
Joining us today is musician and singer Pat Smillie. Today we're talking about his collection of singles he calls his double nickel sessions. So far, 6 out of 10 of the singles have been released, including a blues rock song back in '69 and Lovers and Leavers. So welcome, Pat. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me, Pandora. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, so you really cover a lot of ground stylistically in this collection. You love music, you love the blues, you're super passionate about music, and you have all of these influences. Your vocals have a real classic sound, and some of them remind me of Dr. John.
Absolutely. Actually, I was a ginormous fan of Dr. John, and I had the privilege of meeting him when I first moved to Chicago. This is so true. 1992, my first week in Chicago, I went down to Buddy Guy's Legends. I wanted to see what it was all about. I was a graduate student at Loyola University, and I managed to catch the train downtown. Dr. John was performing at Legends that night, and I brought a copy of his album Gumbo, which was one of my favorites. I wanted to get it autographed. So I waited until after the show, and he had a woman that worked with him. I believe she was his tour manager at the time. They just called her BB. And fans were handing her stuff to bring down to, at that point, the dressing room at Legends was in the basement. So they were handing her items to have Dr. John sign. And I held my next, I would really rather, if I could, maybe have a chance to meet him and have him sign it in person. And she said, "Okay, baby, you just wait here and we'll call you. I'll bring you down a little bit later." So I waited my turn, and she brought me down to the basement. And in the dressing room, Elvin Bishop was down there. He'd come by to say hello to Dr. John, and Buddy Miles was there. He was in town. And so Dr. John, he was so nice to me. I waited until the whole dressing room cleared out, and he said, "Smiley, come over here." And I went over and I talked with him, and I explained to him, I just moved here to Chicago. I've been trying to get taken seriously as an artist, and he said, "Well, just go every chance you get to sing or play, do it. Don't worry about pay or whatever. Right now, you need the exposure, you need the experience of playing live." And I took that advice to heart, and I started taking every chance I could to sit in with other people and get my band booked. And when the night was over, he walked me back to my car. It was unbelievable. It was so sweet. And him and BB walked me back to the car and wished me good luck. And that was my Dr. John story. I went on, I probably saw him maybe two or three more times after that. But he was a big influence on me, and, his love of Ray Charles. And, he recorded on Atlantic Records. And I was a big fan of all the soul music coming out of Atlantic. the song you talked about, Wide Open Heart. Actually, when I was making that song, I think I had a singer named Solomon Burke in mind, but it was still that old kind of early 60s R&B kind of rolling, rollicking, or Ray Charles, he was a prime influence, but all three of those artists probably contributed a little bit to the latest single, Wide Open Heart. Yeah. So I kind of wrote it about my Laura a little bit, and a little bit, whatever, just made up in my mind. But that's how that one came about. And just basically just kind of an ode to Solomon Burke or Ray Charles, like early 60s kind of Atlantic Records recording. I like writing songs about good love. I have all the Howlin Wolf songs are like about bad love, or I wore my 44 so long and made my shoulders show. I don't want to write a song about shooting anybody or cheating on anybody. So I try to write about what I'm lucky I got love in my life now.
One look, saw what I needed, and she had what it took. Our love is like an open book. I can't keep this world from turning, spinning around and round. I find peace of mind just knowing my baby never lets me down.
When I decided to go to grad school, I graduated from Michigan State University with a bachelor's in psychology. I didn't know a lot about what I wanted to do. I knew I was pretty good at doing coursework and going to class, and so I thought, well, I'll go and I'll go get a doctorate somewhere. So I applied in cities that had musical heritages, and Chicago, and I applied to Tulane in New Orleans. Actually, I didn't get into Tulane University, but I was accepted at Loyola Chicago, and I packed up the car and I drove out there, and I remember I had a Howlin Wolf tape. I listened to Howlin Wolf greatest hits for the entire 4.5 hour drive from Detroit area to Chicago, and I started my grad school experience there in Chicago in 1992 is when I moved there. So, and I lived there. I ended up spending 23 years there, living and performing, and that's really where I went pro as a musician was in Chicago. I got to say, starting out in Chicago, one of my big influences was Chuck Berry. Mm-hmm. And Chuck Berry was a chess recording artist. And, he came out of St. Louis, but he recorded for chess. And I've always had a love of language. And I mean, Chuck was really like the original rock and roll poet, and I owe so much to him. I've probably recorded 4 or 5 songs that are just like Chuck Berry ripoffs on some level, or heavily influenced. But I mean, I just love the meter, and I mean, he was so so brilliant. So Chuck Berry was a Chicago artist. He said that Muddy Waters told him to go up to Chess Records and tell Leonard about, himself and record him. So there was, obviously Muddy Waters, Howlin Wolf, Chuck Berry, Buddy Guy came up under, and Buddy's, obviously still there. Now he's probably the, premier notable blues man in the world. So Buddy was still, by the time I got there, I moved to Chicago in 92. Muddy Waters and Howlin Wolf had passed away long ago, but Junior Wells was still alive. Buddy was still alive. I got to see a lot of, when I started performing around Chicago a couple of years later after I moved there. I went to all kinds of jam sessions. It took me a couple of years to meet the musicians and make connections to book my own gigs. But, when I did, all those guys were still around. James Cotton was still active at the time. As a musician, a singer who doesn't play an instrument, I would go into a lot of these open jam sessions, but it became really frustrating to me because if you can't lead the band playing an instrument at a jam session, it's hard. You know what I mean? And if you're a singer, you're kind of left to like, oh, what song do I know that's the lowest common denominator that five strangers can play behind me, So there was a lot of like Stormy Mondays and a lot of slow blues and stuff like that. And I love that material, but I have a leaning towards R&B and soul music, particularly, and I'd come across this guitarist. I was a fan, but this South Side singer guitarist by the name of Vance Kelly and the Backstreet Blues Band. And they would play every Thursday night at the Checkerboard Lounge on the South Side. And it became a very popular hangout for a lot of college kids, a lot of the kids from the University of Chicago. If I could ever get a ride down there from the north side where my campus was in Rogers Park in the north side of Chicago, it was a long ride. I didn't have a car the first couple of years I lived there. So I had to rely on other people who were feeling adventurous and would want to go down to the neighborhood and hear the bands, Vance, I was a huge fan of Vance and followed him around for probably a year and a half. And I got up the nerve to ask him if I could, sit in with him and do a couple songs. And he was very generous, and he kind of took me under his wing. And, he had a very tight band, and they played a lot of soul music, a lot of songs by Stax artists and Atlantic artists and Motown. Vance could do it all. And I think that was part of the things that attracted to me to his style, because he was very diversified in the, he could play gut bucket blues. He could play a disco song. He could do Purple Rain. Whatever the situation called for. And so he started having me on as his like little guest star. And I did that I traveled with him all around the Chicagoland area and the Midwest with Vance, doing these little guest slots for 2 or 3 songs. And I built up my repertoire, 2 or 3 songs at a time. I realized that I needed to have the same group of guys behind me and learning stuff if I wanted to sing anything besides Stormy Monday. So I found a tight band who would let me build a repertoire with them, which is Vance was very, like I said, he didn't have to do that at all, but he saw that I guess I wanted it, and he saw something in the way I performed. And so, he would have the band, they would play as tight behind me as they would behind him. And if they didn't, he'd get in, he'd give them the business. He'd say, look, you messed up Pat's song there, And so it was always right. And he taught me how to carry myself on stage. And I learned, there's no substitute for rehearsal and repetition. If you want to get a tight band, because a lot of people see Vance will be on stage and the band would be moving from song to song, playing these medleys, like, 4 or 5 songs, blending them all together like a mashup. And they'd be all like just stupefied, they'd be all like, they're so, but they do that. They play those same songs 5 days a week, I mean, so by the time you see them a week later, they've played the song 6 or 7 times. They're get really tight that way.
Mm-hmm.
And having the chance to play them in front of people, you see what elements of the songs the audience reacts to. So I'm going to keep that bit, or maybe that didn't work. So I learned a lot about putting together a set list and a medley or whatever through Vance. And, it's all about being rehearsed and being a chance to play with the same musicians over and over again.
Another season is come and gone. I never finished that summer song. I can tell by the way you've been living, you ain't a believer. Stolen moments like hand-me-downs, 2 hearts in the lost and found. Ain't it hard when she ain't around, when you need her? Oh, some more than others, the lovers and the leavers. Hold your breath and let it out. Stand in place and twist and shout. If you love her, let her know you wanna keep her. 'Cause they come and they go, the lovers and the leavers. Hidden heartbreaks are everywhere, for lovers who play truth or dare. Sometimes it seems so simple, yet it runs much deeper. It's hard to tell the difference between the lovers and the leavers. It's hard to tell the difference between the lovers and the leavers. It's so hard to tell the difference between the lovers and the leavers.
What are your thoughts on collaborating and the importance of teamwork?
I tell people, if I ever don't show up at the gig, I've been hurt, or if I'm late and that call 911 or something, because I'm hurt, because I will be here. I will call you. You can be a, number 10 musician, but with a number 3 personality. And, that's not going to last for long. I'd rather have like a number 7 musician who's also, a number 9 or 10 personality. That guy will work with the group towards the goal, and eventually bring his level of playing up. That's important. It's like the ability to hang with the person, when we went to Europe, I was lucky enough to go over in 2011. We toured Poland and the Czech Republic. We were there out there for about 3 weeks, 21 days. And every day was about 4 to 6 hours in the van driving to the next gig. And I mean, you have to know who you're going to be on that trip with. I got caught in a situation where I was really not familiar with how much this one particular guy loved the sound of his own voice. And as we drove 6 hours, it was just nonstop, talking. And I was just like, we were just like, please, let's be quiet for half an hour on the next ride. Play the quiet game or whatever, So it was like, but being in the van like that, these are guys that I played around the city of Chicago with all the time. But it was there, we just meet up, do the gig, go our separate ways. Now we were, stuck together for 3 weeks, learning all about each other. 3,000 miles away from home.
You love working with Jim McCarty. Tell us a little bit about Jim's background and your collaboration.
Jim McCarty, he was the original member of Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. So are you familiar with the song Devil with the Blue Dress?
Yes.
Jim started out 18 years old with Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. They had their first hit in 1965. They bumped the Beatles off of the top of the charts for a while. I mean, they're the reason why everyone else did it. You know, they're the reason. They were the guys that the MC5 was trying to copy. They were the guys that the Stooges were trying to copy. Now, history has been a lot kinder to the MC5 and the Stooges than they have been to Mitch Ryder and Detroit Wheels. But make no mistake, they were the originals out of here. And Jim was the guy. Jim was their Keith Richards or what have you. You know what I mean? They were so hot that when they went into the studio, they were in New York recording their hit song, their first hit called Jenny Take a Ride, which is a medley of CC Ryder, the Chick Willis song, and then Jenny, Little Richard song. They had Mitch Ryder Detroit, Jenny Take a Ride. That was their first hit song. They were in the studio in New York. Keith Richards and Brian Jones came into the studio and they did the hand claps. When you listen to the records, there's a bunch of hand clappings on this song, and it's like the hand claps are louder than some of the guitars at one point. But, you know, they were just like having a big party in the studio, and two of the Stones were there because Mitch was so hot. They were there to check him out and watch the session, and they got roped into, you know, providing hand claps and doing a little extra percussion on the track. So Jim has been around for a long time, and all the guys, Eric Clapton, the first time that the Cream came to play in the United States, they played in New York. There was a DJ named Murray the K, and he would put on these old school rock and roll shows. And Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels were the headliners of that particular show. And Cream and The Who were both on that gig as, like, you know, somewhere further down the bill, and some of their first visits to the United States. So, you know, Jim has been around for a long time, and he's still doing great. He just turned 80 years old, and he, you know, his work on Back in '69 is just incendiary. I mean, he throws down. He said, "I can still get it up." I go, "Okay, Jimmy, throw down, buddy, whatever." But he's a you know, humble guy, and I was a fan of his when I was growing up as a kid in Detroit. He had a group throughout the 80s and late 70s and mid 80s called the Rockets. And for a period, they were my favorite group. So he was the guitar player in my favorite band when I was a kid, you know, between 10, 11, 12 years old. And now to think that I'm, you know, I work with him on and have recorded 3 songs with him. I mean, it makes me feel good. In between those two groups, he was with a band called Cactus, which was sort of like a blues rock super group. He worked with them between like 1969 and 1971. And if you could find that Cactus, they do a great version of the Howlin Wolf song called Evil, if you want to check that one out. And that might be one and Parchment Farm was another one. But Jim's guitar playing was so fast. Jim has been kind of underappreciated. I mean, he's never had a great manager or the big hit that would put him out there the way like that some of his contemporaries like Jeff Beck or Jimmy Page or Eric Clapton got out there. Make no mistake, those guys all know who Jim was, and they were all fans of his. There's a recording of Jimmy McCarty and Jimi Hendrix jamming together. It's called the Jimmy Jam. One of the albums that Hendrix's manager released after his death.
Yeah, 9 to the Universe, produced by Alan Douglas.
McCarty also went on to play with Buddy Miles, the Buddy Miles Express, and their first album was produced by Jimi Hendrix. So Jim was not only a friend of Jimi Hendrix and played with him, but he was also produced by Jimmy. Here's my friend was actually there. He has like one of Jimmy's scarves. You know, they used to date the same girl for a while. It was crazy times, swinging London. Anyways, but yeah, so that's Jim McCarty, and we've done 3 records together. My favorite one is the Back in '69. That single that shows Jim and all his really heavy Cactus glory. And we did Broke Down Chevy #2, and then we had a third song that on my album, my Lonesome for a Long Time album. It's called Boulder City Breakdown, and that's sort of more of a Chuck Berry influenced song. When Jimmy was with the Rockets, my favorite stuff they did together was kind of like these kind of supercharged Chuck Berry style rockers, you know. So I'm like, I want to get him to do that on one of my songs. So pretty much, anytime, as long as I'm still making records and Jim's still alive, we have a pact that I'll try to save 1 or 2 songs for him.
This is Pat Smillie's Back in '69 featuring Jim McCarty. Tell us about your experiences with guitarist and singer Vance Kelly.
Vance was so beloved around Chicago that wherever he played, like if there was like a black artist of some note, or old 60s soul star, they would seek out Vance because they heard he was the guy who could play their stuff, right? And when I was there, I've met Lou Rawls. I got to be on the same show with Lou Rawls once. I met Alvin Cash, and one of my big 2 of the guys who I met through Vance initially, who proved to be supporters of me or really gave me encouragement, and they both have passed on. But one was Tyrone Davis, and he was like the king of Chicago soul, right? He had old songs like Turn Back the Hands of Time and Can I Change My Mind. Tyrone was very, he every time he saw me, he'd greet me with a hug and he'd be excited to ask me about how I'm doing. I didn't go to his house for Thanksgiving or anything, but when we saw each other out and about, he was always nice to me, and just supportive. And one time he joined my band on stage. We were playing a little social club on the West Side, and he got up and we started playing one of his songs. That was kind of a joke. Like, you couldn't get Tyrone to come up and sing, but if he heard anybody else trying to sing one of his songs, he'd kind of take offense to it a little bit, and he'd come up and you could bait him that way. He'd come up to the stage and snatch the mic away from me and do it himself. So we got him one time like that. We started into one of his songs, Turning Point, And he was wearing a big fur jacket, and he walked up from whatever the corner he was in, and he came up and he did 3 songs with my band, and me and the 2 girls I had singing background with me, we got to sing background behind Tyrone on Turn Back the Hands of Time, Turning Point, which is one of the songs that I had in my set at the time, and he had another song called Mom's Apple Pie. So we backed him up on those 3 songs. So Tyrone was a big influence and supporter, and also maybe almost more so Otis Clay. And Otis passed away, I think, about 3 or 4 years ago. But Otis, I do one of his songs called Trying to Live My Life Without You that Bob Seger covered. And Bob Seger is obviously another one of my guys here in Detroit. And I actually, in 2011, May, that was the year we went to Europe. In May that month, we got invited to open for Bob Seger at the Allstate Arena in Chicago. And I got to sing in front of 18,000 people that night on stage. And I was just like, I walked up, I got on the mic, and I was like, my name is Pat Smillie. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and I waited my whole life to do this gig. And the audience was they just loved me, right? They were like, yeah! And we did our little half an hour set, and it went good. And so between May, which was when we opened for Bob Seger, and November, which was when we went to Poland, I mean, you couldn't tell me nothing. I know my life was going great. I was like, this is what I've been hoping for my whole life, But anyways, the tour was a little rocky. That was our first time. We had a bass player who wasn't my regular guy. I had to pick him up at the last minute, and he was late to the lobby call almost every single morning, for 3 weeks. That's disrespectful to me and the people who are hosting us and everything. So I learned a valuable lesson, though, because it was my name. I was responsible for that guy because I was the one who brought him. So I've learned to tighten the ranks. And like you said, I surround myself by people who we're all on the same page. And, it's been a better now that I moved back here in Detroit and I'm working with some of my, the guys around here. It's been beautiful for me. And Josh Ford, my producer and songwriting partner, we're now, these songs, the double nickel songs, this is our 3rd project together since 2019. So I feel like I'm doing the work, and we're trying to get the songs out there, and feeling good. I got access to all the best musicians around town. I got a killer horn section who, when we record, these guys spent years on the road with Bob Seger. So, I'm feeling good about where I landed here when I came back home, so things have been going good.
That's very cool. Well, sometimes we need those moments to make us grateful for what we have, right?
Oh, yeah.
Very cool. So how can folks find you and contact you, get on your mailing list?
My website is patsmillie.com, PATSMILLIE.com. You can email me at pat@patsmillie.com. I also have a Facebook presence, and I'm on Instagram a little bit. If I have something new out there, I try to let everyone know.
Yeah, and you're releasing more singles in the spring, too. So folks can keep track of your new releases on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you so much, Pat.
Thank you so much.
We've been speaking with singer-songwriter Pat Smillie. You've been listening to Healing Wisdom. I'm Pandora Peoples, and all of our shows are podcasts at healingwisdomradioshow.com and WOMR.org. You can also find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to go out with Hurt My Feelings from Pat Smillie.
When I try to call you, you don't pick up the phone. just sideshow.